Hi, everyone, and welcome back to Travel Time Stories. If this is your first time tuning in, I invite you to go back and check out my previous episodes. On this week's episode, I will share some more about myself, offer a travel tip, and share the story of my second cruise with my sister Anne and the great excursions we took. I am your host, Shannon from Texas, and thank you for tuning in. So grab your favorite beverage and let's get into it. Three things got me through my childhood, and those were reading, writing, and singing. My books whisked me away from reality. My writing, which I had won prizes for, allowed me to put into words what I was too shy to say. It also got me in trouble from time to time. And the singing allowed me to release all the feelings bottled up inside. Mama used to always say I was born with a pencil in my hand. While other kids wanted toys, I was happy with a paper and pencil. I was adopted in 1974 at just 5 days old. My adopted parents were wonderful people, and I was always the apple of my daddy's eye, a true daddy's girl. My birth mother, Susan, from Kansas, was married with a 2-year-old child, and her husband was away in the military at the time of my conception. So her family told her she had to give up her child for adoption to remain in their home. I would later find out that I was not the only child she gave up, but a few years prior she had given up her first child too. This must have been a hard decision for her and mentally damaging. The one thing that must have helped is that she knew I was going to a good family. Susan had come to Houston towards the end of her pregnancy to visit her sister Brenda. While she was here, she was introduced to a couple named Jill and Kenneth, who were friends with her sister and brother-in-law. After getting to know them, she explained her situation and asked if they would be willing to adopt her baby. Being newly married and in their early 20s, they were not ready to be parents. But Jill told her mother about the situation, and her mom said if the baby is a girl, she would be willing to adopt her. Lucky for me, I was a girl, so my adopted mom agreed to meet Susan, and once I was born, the adoption papers were drawn up. Here's the fun part. Both parents must sign for a child to be adopted. Normal, right? In my case, by law, I had 3 parents, 1 mom, 2 dads. So all 3 parties were required to sign papers for me to be legally adopted. The reason I had 2 dads is since Susan was legally married and it was her husband's insurance that covered my birth, he was listed as my father on the birth certificate, even though I wasn't his biological child. Susan's husband at the time refused to sign, telling the judge I wasn't his. However, the judge informed him that since he was listed as the father on my birth certificate, he would be financially responsible for me till I turned 18 unless he signed the adoption document. This got him to sign straight away. Regarding my actual biological father, each time Susan was asked about him and his location, she did not provide an answer other than his name. On the final day for the documents to be signed, her lawyer returned the papers with my biological father's signature. However, I would discover that my biological father was never told about me, and he is not the one who signed my adoption document. His signature was forged. So technically, I was illegally adopted. Susan returned to Kansas after my birth, but my adopted parents lived in fear for 2 years, as by law, Susan could change her mind during this period and take me back. When I was 18 months old, Susan showed up at my adopted parents' home with her young daughter in tow and wanted to see me. Mama told her she felt it would be confusing for me to see Susan and paid for her bus ticket to return to Kansas. Some might think this was cruel, But Susan was a stranger to me, and the only parents I had known were Mama and Daddy. I can just imagine the fear Mama must have felt that Susan would take me away from her. She had raised me from birth. We had a strong bond, and they loved me the same as their own biological children. My daddy was such an amazing man with a strong character. He married my mama and took in her 4 children and treated them as his own, something rare for a man to do. They later would have a child of their own, and then 13 years later adopted me. Mama also raised her first grandchild. We lived in a small suburb outside of Houston and were considered a middle-class family. Mama was a traditional housewife, and Daddy worked as a longshoreman at the Port of Houston, from which he retired when I was in 6th grade. My daddy was a military man, retired Navy frogman who fought during World War II. He loved hunting, fishing, and wrestling. This was a passion he shared with all his kids, including me. Most girls want to stay inside playing with dolls, but I loved being outdoors with Daddy. Living in the house was Mama, Daddy, my brother Joseph, my nephew Tony, and myself. My other siblings, Lynn, Lee, Jill, and Donna, had their own families. My childhood was a very happy one, until it wasn't, but more on that later. Let us get to my travel tip for today and then delve into my second cruise. Today's travel tip is with the increased prices for drink packages on board ships now. My advice is to calculate whether the cost is worth it for you. If you're someone who doesn't drink much, then you would probably save a lot of money just to purchase your drinks a la carte versus getting the drink package. On average, drinks cost $10 to $15 per drink, and the drink package averages $80 to $90 per day per person, and both people in the cabin are required to get it. So for a 7-day cruise, that runs $1,000 for 2 people. So take some time and think it over before you purchase. Back to the story. My second cruise was in 2015 with Anne. This was my first time using a travel agent to book a vacation, and the experience started as a good one, but then ended poorly. Being an agent myself now, I can say that not all agents are created equal. The agent suggested we try the Norwegian Jewel, and we were told it had been newly refurbished and would be a 7-day cruise to the Caribbean. The ship would be sailing from the Port of Houston, not Galveston, which made it more convenient. Anne flew into Hobby Airport on the day of the cruise, and then it was just a short drive to the port. Jeff dropped us off so we didn't have to worry about parking. I wish they hadn't closed that cruise terminal because it was a really nice one. We were both traveling without passports, but something that occurred on this trip would make us decide to file for our passports when we returned. It was Anne's first cruise, so I made sure to book some amazing excursions for us. We both agree that these excursions have maintained the top position of all the excursions we have done since. First impressions as we took our first steps onto the ship. It was the one and only time my jaw didn't hit the floor. In fact, I almost cried, but had to hold my emotions in check to not ruin Anne's trip. She was the opposite. Having never sailed before, she had nothing to compare it to, so for her it was a jaw-drop moment, and she was grinning from ear to ear. The ship had not been refurbished, as we were told, and the decor was very worn and dated. It was not even close to the level of the Carnival Dream. Thankfully, Anne thought it was spectacular. The food was another disappointment for me. It was subpar, even at the specialty restaurants. The plus side was the shows were Broadway level and beat Carnival hands down. They had a Cirque du Soleil performance that was mesmerizing, and we even got to get our pictures taken with the lead star from the show. We had an ocean view cabin with a large picture window. It literally had a ledge so you could sit next to the window. We did enjoy the many activities and trivia offered on board. Unlike my first cruise, Norwegian's main dining is different. There isn't a set time for dining. It was called freestyle. And they give you the option to dine with a group or have a private table. So we opted for a private table each time. Nowadays, almost all of the cruise lines offer you a choice of set dining time, where you will be seated with the same group each night at the same time, or anytime dining, where you schedule your time to dine and then you usually get a private table. Our first stop was Cozumel, and this would be the port where we learned a life lesson. Make sure your watch is on ship time and pay attention. Don't let time get away from you. Stepping off the ship in Cozumel, the pier is extremely long to walk, but they do have pedicabs available to use. I had 2 excursions booked for this port. I had heard some people talking about fish pedicures that they had done in Mexico, and I really wanted to try it out. I did some research and found a place in Cozumel called Islander Fish Spa, and it's located inside Mr. Sancho's resort. This was our first stop of the day. You sit and put your feet in this tank, and these little fish eat the dead skin off. It doesn't hurt. In fact, it tickles badly, which makes it so fun. If you haven't tried it, you should. I've placed the link in the description below. Anne loves the beach, so I booked a day pass at the Occidental Grand Resort, and this was our next stop. I had booked this pass directly with the resort and did not go through the cruise line, which saved us $20 per person. The pass included lunch, unlimited drink, pool access, and beach access with chairs, umbrellas, and day beds. We could have done a day pass at Mr. Sancho's, but it's more of a party vibe there, and we prefer a more quiet, chill vibe. After spending hours at the resort, we headed back to the port and still had a couple hours left, so we decided to do some shopping. Well, folks, we lost track of time while shopping, and as we were checking out, we heard a sound that sent chills down our spine. The ship's horn. Panic immediately set in for both of us. Thoughts were running through our head. We're about to get stranded in Mexico with no passport. How would we get home? What do we do? All of our stuff is on the ship. I looked at Anne and said, "We must run," and I immediately took off. We had to run across the mall area and upstairs to get to the entrance of the pier. Guards are standing at the entrance to check your IDs before you enter the pier. However, when we got there, they were laughing and waving us through. Remember I mentioned the long pier? Anne was behind me, but as we started running on the pier, she stops and shouts, "I can't do it!" I briefly look back as I'm huffing and struggling to breathe myself and shout, "Bitch, you better run. You have to do it." We continue running and hear cheers and shouts. As I look up, I see the decks and balconies are filled with everyone on board watching us. Some were laughing, but others were cheering us on. Any other time, I would have died of embarrassment. But my adrenaline was pumping so hard, it didn't faze me. As we're halfway down the pier, we pass a pedicab with an elderly couple, so at least we were not the only ones late. We made it just as they were starting to put the gangway up. Close call. Lesson learned to never let that happen again. But yes, We were those people. We were pier runners. Our second stop was Belize. This is a tender port, which means the ship doesn't pull up to a pier. It anchors in the waters just off the coast, and they load groups into boats to take you up to the port. I booked an excursion through an independent company called Butt Up for us to do zip lining and cave tubing. It would be a first for Anne to zip line, and she is like me, afraid of heights. But I knew after my experience in Jamaica that once she got over her initial nerves, she would love it like I did. And I was right. The van picked up a small group of us from the port, and it turned out to be all ladies, which was nice. The drive to the location was a long one to go up into the jungle. Once we arrived, it was a beautiful location with vegetation that I had never seen before. We were informed it would be a short hike through the jungle to get to the zip line. What they didn't say was that it was a steep hike, and both Anne and I thought we were going to die from the heat and our aching legs before we got there. Along the way, our guide pointed out the different flora and fauna we were seeing, which was something we both loved, especially Anne, who has been known to tell people she's a horticulturalist, which isn't true. But you'll hear all about that when I talk about our trip to New Orleans. Once we arrived at the first line, we had to climb a ladder to the first platform. Anne was freaking out a bit, but I was ready to go. I believe I was the only one in our group to have ziplined before. I wanted to go first, but we ended up going last since Anne was nervous. She handled it like a pro, though, and after that first line, she was volunteering to go first for the rest of the lines. The last platform was the tallest one and was higher than the ones I had been on in Jamaica. We were tethered to the tree, and I walked out to the edge to look out at the amazing view with the river running below us, and Anne was screaming at me to get away from the edge. This last line was the longest, and we got to zip down and across the river below, which was amazing. Once the zip line was over, we changed into our swimsuits for the cave tubing. I'm from Texas. I love river tubing. Every year we used to go to New Braunfels to tube the Cozumel and Guadalupe rivers. In another podcast, I'll tell you about when Jeff took me to camp and tubed the Guadalupe River for the first time. He tried to drown me. This was shortly after we first got together, and I should have took it as a sign for things to come. Back to the present story. We got geared up with our helmets, life vests, and tubes. The water was beautiful and crystal clear as it wound through the jungle. We observed toucans, howler monkeys, and other animals in the trees as we floated along. It was like a dream. Anne and I both have been caving many times, but experiencing it as we floated through the cave on our tubes was new and exciting. Before leaving the location, we were treated to a lunch with local dishes, and the food was really good. I would highly recommend this excursion if you're going to Belize. They also have an option to add on an ATV tour. Our last stop before returning home was Honduras. I really love Honduras. It is one of my favorite ports. We wanted to do something different at this location. We already had a beach day, we did zip lining and cave tubing, so for this stop, I booked a full spa day for us to relax and be pampered. I found a place independent of the cruise line options, and it had great reviews. Our booking included transportation to and from the port, and we were guaranteed to get back on time. It is called Spa Bon Suerte. And not only do you get spa treatments, but they have a pool, jacuzzi, private beach, and lush gardens that are available for all guests to use. They are the only standalone private day spa in Roatan and a short 20-minute drive from the port. The day we were there, we had the whole place to ourselves, which was amazing. They offer special prices for cruise passengers. We spent $150 per person and got a seaweed body wrap, 90-minute full body hot stone massage on the water, manicure and pedicure. They served us cucumber water while we were getting our treatment. We spent time by the pool. In total, we were there about 4 hours before returning to the ship. To get a taxi or meet a driver for an excursion not booked through the cruise line in Honduras, you must exit the port and the drivers are waiting outside the gate. Upon meeting our driver outside the gate, he didn't speak much English, so communication was slightly difficult. He told us to follow him, and we had to walk down the road almost a quarter of a mile to a parking area before getting to his car. So this made us a little nervous as two single women, but it was absolutely fine. The driver was so nice and did his best to point out things as we drove to the spa. Funny story, he did ask us the usual, where are you from, our names, etc. Then he asked if we were together, and due to the language barrier, Anne thought he just meant traveling together. However, what he meant was, were we a couple? So Anne's reply of yes was not correct. I couldn't stop laughing, and she kept looking at me, wondering why I was laughing. And then he went on to let us know that in Honduras, they welcome couples such as us. Once I stopped laughing, I explained to the driver that we are not a couple, but we are sisters. I love to tease Anne still to this day about telling our driver we were lesbians instead of sisters. I still don't know if he believed us because when I corrected this, he just said okay and winked. I just want everyone to know that I am a proud ally of the LGBTQ plus community, as my son is gay and I fully support him and can't wait to have a son-in-law. My handsome son is single, so any single guys out there, leave a message. My son is a great cook, does housework, college graduate, funny, great listener, and wonderful conversationalist. Everyone who meets him says he's an old soul and mature for his age. He has spent the last 2 years helping me care for his father who is on dialysis, and without him, we would not have made it through this. So thankful for you, my boy. Whoever you end up with is going to be one lucky man. My hope is for everyone to make memories for life through travel, so reach out and let me help you make your next travel memory. Tune in again to learn some more about me, hear more about each of my trips, and meet other people in my life as they share their travel experiences. Please don't forget to hit the like button, subscribe, and share. Leave a comment below to let me know what you think of the show or what you want to hear more of. Or tell me your travel story. I might just read it on the podcast. Until next time.